And now turning to the Middle East, where the president is on his final leg of his first major foreign trip since taking office. Throughout the trip, President Trump has repeatedly warned that Iran can never get a nuclear weapon. That comes after several rounds of talks between the U.S. and Iranian officials, and after the president told Meet the Press that he wanted a, quote, total dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program. Today, while speaking at a business roundtable in Qatar, the president seemed to hint that a deal with Iran was close, though he didn't provide any details.
It's very simple. It's not like I have to give you 30 pages worth of details. There's only one sentence: they can't have a nuclear weapon. And I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal.
The president is now in the UAE, where he received a lavish welcome like we saw during his previous stops in the region. The pomp continued with an official state dinner and visit at the presidential palace in Abu Dhabi. And joining me now is NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake, who's in Abu Dhabi, and NBC News chief foreign correspondent Engel, who is in Tehran. So, Garrett, I know you're having a good time, so good to see you. President Trump appeared optimistic about a potential nuclear deal with Iran. Can you tell us how close this is? Do we know any more about what this deal could even look like?
Well, I don't know that it's especially close, but it seemed to be a reaction to Richard's great interview with a senior member of the Iranian regime and advisor to the supreme leader there that the president turned around and reposted today, suggesting that Iran would be willing to end its pursuit of nuclear weapons entirely and give up its enrichment of uranium to the stage necessary to turn it into weapons in exchange for sanction relief. That appears to mirror what the U.S. most recent offer to Iran has been on that topic. And so the president expressing some optimism, although this does seem to be a case where, as he sort of alluded to in that bite, they may have a big picture agreement, but in terms of how things actually come together and how even these ideas would be enforced and followed through upon, I don't think they're anywhere near that level of specificity, Amish.
And President Trump, we have to remind folks, he withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal that was negotiated by former President Obama. Is there a scenario where we get a deal that's similar to the one that he blew up and we end up right back where we were in 2018?
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. I mean, this president is particularly distrustful of any kind of multilateral agreement, particularly any kind of multilateral agreement that was engaged in by one of his Democratic predecessors. And so even if he's essentially retracing the work of the Obama administration and the U.S.'s European partners in striking the original Iran nuclear agreement to come up with something that looks very similar, I think he will feel more confident in it. Now, I think also the big difference is his belief that his maximum pressure strategy during his 4 years as president really weakened Iran economically to the point where they might be more willing to follow the rules laid out in some kind of agreement here, knowing what the consequences were in his 4-year term when there was not an agreement in place.
And the president is, of course, on his final leg of this Middle East trip. How much do you think the president's view of the region has changed? And what do you think is different as you're on the ground reporting?
Well, look, I was not on that original trip 8 years ago now, but I can tell you from covering this president for a long time, I do think his view has changed substantially. I think he's come to see a lot of himself in the way that some of these Arab leaders operate, some sort of authoritarian, realpolitik, very proud of their exercise of power, very unencumbered by what the rest of the world thinks about them, and willing to use influence very transactionally. It's the way that the president operated in his private business dealings and much the way that he likes to operate in foreign policy. He sees that reflected back here. He likes the kind of welcome that he gets. And I also think you're seeing him create some distance from himself on a number of foreign policy issues from Benjamin Netanyahu and from the Israeli foreign policy system, which I think during his first term, he was sort of more inclined to move in lockstep there. Now he feels a little bit more freedom to follow his own instincts, and they're leading him here to the Gulf region, where he thinks he and the United States can make a lot of money by not being too concerned about what goes on behind closed doors in these countries when the U.S. isn't around or interested, Yamiche.
Yeah, well, President Trump following his instincts, that's definitely something that's going to continue. So thank you so much, Garrett Haake, for your reporting. And Richard, what are you hearing from officials in Iran about a potential nuclear deal?
Iran and the Trump administration now appear to be quite close to reaching a deal. I spoke to a top advisor to Iran's supreme leader, one of the most powerful men in this country, and he laid out the conditions under which Iran would accept a deal. He said that Iran would agree to never have a nuclear weapon, that it would get rid of its highly enriched uranium, that it would only enrich uranium to a low level required for civilian uses only, that it would allow in international inspectors to oversee all of this and verify that it is complying with this deal in exchange for the immediate lifting of all sanctions. The interview got a lot of attention. It has been played on state television here in Iran. President Trump posted it on Truth Social and told reporters that Iran has, quote unquote, sort of agreed to the deal. The final details obviously still need to be worked out. Negotiations are ongoing. But considering the amount of positive attention this framework discussion is getting both from President Trump himself and Iran, it seems like the two sides are getting quite close.
And thank you so much, Richard Engel, for that report.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.